You're like 2 minutes early. That's very un-rock and roll of you.
It's it's very Swiss.
True, true. Ah, dear. Whereabouts are you at the moment? That looks awesome.
I'm at my home in Zurich, Switzerland.
I'm liking the photos on the ceiling, mate. That's a nice use of
Well, it's
space.
like when I was a teenager. It's the same hard rock posters that I had when I was a teenager, and I had them on the ceiling as well because I ran out of space on the wall.
I like it. Mate, I was going over your social media and you recently did a post showing your support for Paul Watson of the Sea Shepherd. Now, I interviewed him in, I'm going to say it was 2007. I would have been, just on 20 at the time. The stories he had to tell me blew my mind. It's like,
I can
oh,
imagine.
we got chased by Russian destroyers and they were firing missiles at us. And I'm like, my day job is not nearly as exciting as you. How?
Yeah, it's exciting, but it's probably also some of his stories are probably extremely difficult to digest because they reveal the utter coldness of human beings when it comes to other beings on this planet. You know, why do they chase him? Because they want to keep murdering animals.
Mm.
Yeah,
It yeah, it blew my mind too that obviously it's only now that he's been arrested for something. But I remember I asked him, I was like, dude, have you at the time, obviously remember this is 2007, he's like, yeah, we just sneak into ports and just open the bilge pumps and just flood all these, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars worth of ships. And I've never been convicted of a crime. And I was like, wow.
yeah.
Oh
Well,
dear.
he's he's a true hero of our time, and I'm sure many people will disagree with me, but standing up for your ideas takes courage, especially nowadays where you can be destroyed very quickly with social media and rumors and lies. And then standing up for an idea that the idea is not just a political one or anything like that, but it's an idea that aims at saving other beings on this planet that don't have a voice. That's something very big, whether you agree with it or not. I mean, that takes courage, and you know exactly you're only one of a very small group of people on this planet. You stand pretty much alone, and you're being ridiculed and hunted and persecuted and by a multi-billion-dollar industry. That takes guts. That to me, that person is a hero.
Hmm. Have you ever had a chance to meet him?
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
No.
But of course, I've been a supporter of Sea Shepherd for a very long time. I've known of their existence for a very long time. I can't even recall when. Even way before I myself became a little more engaged in things like that.
When did your, I, from my understanding, you're a very clean living guy. You don't drink or smoke. Have you ever?
No, I
Wow.
mean, I'll have a cocktail with my band when we arrive at the hotel, but that's as far as it goes. I'm basically not drinking, and then no one never smoked, never took drugs. I wouldn't call that clean living. I still have my vices, but I like a burger as much as everybody. But I just from a very young age, I saw the effects of alcohol and drugs in my circle of friends, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Some people very very close to me suffered from the effects of that, and it just made me think it might not be very smart to also join that.
I feel like that might have made you a bit of an outsider in the metal community um, in the early days.
Without wanting to glamorize anything or romanticize anything. I've been an outsider in school. I've been an outsider in the village I grew up. And then I was basically subconsciously looking for a family, which was the heavy metal scene. But then I eventually found out I'm kind of an outsider there too, uh, which is fine. I still found a family and a life, and I'm extremely grateful for what the scene has given to me. I've been given gifts by the audience that are beyond description. But yeah, I sometimes do feel like an outsider, even just by my approach to my band and my music.
Yeah. What has it been like going back to this very early chapter of your musical life?
It's been a far better and more pleasant experience than I ever could have imagined. Many people know, you probably too, that some of the former members of HELLHAMMER, including myself, struggled for quite a while with some of HELLHAMMER's legacy. For example, some of HELLHAMMER's lyrics, some of the events that took place in our personal lives at the time we were in HELLHAMMER, which made the association with that time sometimes quite painful. Things that the people outside the band couldn't really understand, maybe because they just looked at the music, which is of course the more pleasant angle. So for example, Martin and I had a million discussions about the problematic aspects of HELLHAMMER, and for a while there, we elected to just not deal with it. And it took quite a long time, and it took the reunification of Celtic Frost and Martin and I discussing our history in detail and discussing where do we come from, what has shaped it, what has created our music before we approached the Monothist album. That really brought us closer to our roots, to HELLHAMMER. And it was even to such an extent that we started rehearsing HELLHAMMER's music while we were writing the Monothist album, because we wanted to be in touch with our roots, not just theoretically. We played HELLHAMMER music, we played early Celtic Frost music during rehearsals, just to re-feel what was the essence of where we came from, and to rediscover this. And that was really when the dam broke, and it was for me, it was so much fun to play these songs. We actually wanted to play them on the Monothist tour, but our drummer at the time didn't really play them to an extent that we felt happy with. It just didn't sound right. But that idea kind of never left my head. And then I wrote the book about HELLHAMMER, which intensified the whole thing, because I got in touch with all the ex-HELLHAMMER members. I talked to them, I interviewed them, I collected material, flyers, photos, and so on. So after the release of the book, it was basically a very short path towards actually doing a tribute to bring that music on to the stage, the music that had never been played on stage before.
I feel like in a way this might have been quite therapeutic, going back or dealing with a lot of the emotions that were attached to these songs that you hadn't been dealing with for a while.
Of course, it is. And it is really, for me, it's a very, very personal thing. It confronts me with a younger me that I, sometimes to my surprise, I no longer had remembered some of the aspects of that. I sit there sometimes rehearsing or transcribing these early songs so we can play them with Triumph of Death, and I'm like, wow, I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember this little detail, or I wonder how I arrived at this riff. And it forces you to really kind of study the younger you, which is in a way also a privilege. It's quite an interesting journey.
What would you say to him, younger Tom, if you could say something to him?
I would say to him, in the bigger picture, don't change anything. Even though it doesn't look like it, it's gonna be good eventually. But I would also tell him there's going to be certain events in your life where you should certainly make different decisions, because you might step on other people, which is unjustified, and you will regret that later in your life, which is probably a factor of maturity as a 61-year-old person. We were very driven. Martin and I were very driven when we were young, and we sometimes walked over other people. We also hurt each other sometimes because we were so fanatic. We were really radicals. And we came from very difficult backgrounds, so we really didn't have anything to lose. We didn't have this natural border that you don't cross. We were really unfettered, and that led to a lot of extreme music and a lot of interesting photos and artwork, but it also led sometimes to people being hurt. And that shouldn't have happened, and I regret it. So that's what I would tell the young Tom.
Extreme music made by extreme people.
Yeah, I guess it's one is impossible without the other, and of course you live and you grow up and you have a lot of life experience after 43 years of traveling the world and interacting with people, working in the studio. You hopefully become a little more mature. If not, there's something wrong.
I feel like 43 years of playing on stages, all around the world. What are some of the weirdest things you've seen in mosh pits during your show?
Oh Jesus, there's many. One of our most extreme um, experiences was when we on our very first US tour with Celtic Frost, the very first US headline tour in 1986. We played in San Diego, and it was fantastic. It was with Voivod being the special guest, which is a great combination to begin with. And as we went on stage, about 4 songs in or so, skinheads came into the hall with baseball bats and started a hardcore fight with the audience. And eventually, after like 1.5 songs into that, the road crew came on stage and whisked us off stage and locked us into the backstage. And they themselves took whatever weapon-like things they could find, locked us into the backstage and stood in front of the backstage while there was a huge riot going on for reasons I don't know in the hall. These are moments that you don't really forget.
No, I don't imagine you would, Tom. No. Far out, mate. It reminds me of talking to Barney Greenway about, the events that kind of inspired Nazi punks fuck off. And it blows
Yeah, I
my
can
mind
imagine.
that like skinheads could just be cruising around shows back in the day. Yeah.
And I think with his band, I think the events are times 10, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also a person I look up to immensely.
What's that
He
last
he
part, sorry?
makes he's a person I look up to immensely.
Mm.
He's also somebody who takes a stand and was never afraid to take a stand.
Yeah, when you were described the passion you were describing, how you feel about Sea Shepherd reminded me of Barney, I must admit. You guys have got similar conviction.
Uh, I wish I was as conscious as Barney. I wish I could say last 43 years I was as brave and as involved as Barney. I don't even come close. He's way up there. He deserves a million times more praise than I ever would. And that's the truth. It's not me trying to be artificially humble. That's simply the truth.
Well, he's not all perfect. I asked him where the Fountain of Youth was, and he refused to tell me, bastard.
Yeah, yeah. You just shattered my image of him. He's not perfect. That's right.
Mate, so obviously Hellhammer wasn't received well by critics back in the day. You posted an absolutely brutal review on your social media.
Yeah,
Um,
and I know people were stunned because, of course, nowadays most people don't remember. But this was just one of like hundreds.
yeah. What do you think that if Hellhammer had come out today when exposure wasn't necessarily as governed by tastemakers as it was back in the day, do you think things would have gone better?
Well, I think the music and the lo-fi production would have been instantly accepted because that's normal nowadays.
Hmm.
Extreme metal bands can have any production they want, and a lo-fi production is actually considered underground and cool. But as far as the band itself, we would just be one of a million extreme metal bands, and we would probably sink into that ocean like so many others, unfortunately. There's many great bands nowadays, but there's so many bands around that it's probably more difficult than it ever was to be noticed in that ocean of bands. And of course, I mean, everybody has the right to have a band. I realize that it's a conflict that's probably not solvable. There's more people than ever before, so there's more bands than ever before, and Hellhammer will probably suffer from the same. I think a large part of Hellhammer's reputation is that we were among the first. And had we come around when there would have been 200 Hellhammers, God knows what, or Satan knows what would have happened.
Are there any other acts? So in doing what you're doing by, forming a different band and revisiting that early stuff, are there any other metal bands that you would like to see do a similar thing, like tackle their early material?
Well, we are very lucky to live in an area where, even though decades have passed, a lot of the protagonists are still alive and are actually coming back. Bands that were hugely important at the time, such as Dark Angel or Possessed. And as I hear, there's rumors that Sepultura might come back in the original lineup. So we're very lucky. We're actually experiencing that. I wish Venom would have gotten their stuff together and would tour in the original lineup, but at least they're around in some form. So I can't really complain. And there's a handful of bands where members have died, and that's extremely unfortunate because we all would love to see them, but that's the way it is, isn't it?
It is strange that, I mean, obviously, Aussie is very old now, but metal as a genre is still it's not young, but it's not so old that it's founded. The founders are a lot of the founders aren't still with us, which is cool. Like, it's I, if,
Yeah, but but we're also approaching a time now where they are still with us, but now they're really getting old. And people like Ronnie James Dio, who probably is as important as Ozzy Osbourne, already gone. And like you correctly say, Ozzy Osbourne is not doing too well. So we are now approaching, I think, the first wave of bands that will disappear forever, unless they form a franchise like Kiss. But I'm not really a fan of hologram tours,
no.
you know. But
Uh,
interesting that, I mean, one a band that I worship is Power Trip, and of course I heard they're coming back, but of course they cannot come back with their iconic singer because he died, and I guess that's just the nature of things, even though it's an absolute pity.
yeah. What were So you're coming to Australia with this tour. How have you been received over here throughout your career?
It's very difficult for me to estimate from Switzerland. I've been to Australia with Celtic Frost. I've been to Australia with TRIPTYKON and Triumph Death briefly for the Dark Mofo Festival in Hobart, and we had a fantastic response. But because Australia is so far, it's not a territory that you tour regularly, unfortunately, and it takes regular touring to really establish a band, to get somewhere, to get yourself known. So in a way, every time I come back, I feel like I'm starting from scratch, which probably is the way it is, and that's unfortunate. But it's just the nature of things because of geography. But having said that, the concerts we've played, the reactions have been fantastic, and I would absolutely love to play more concerts for this audience. What can I say?
What was
So
your experience playing Dark Mofo? What was the occasion there?
quite honestly, and I'm not saying that because you're from Australia, and it was one of the best experiences of my life, and I think the rest of the two bands feels similar, in a similar way. That Dark Mofo Festival is not just music; it's a dark arts festival, and much of Hobart is involved in it. And that's just a very magical feeling. Wherever you go, you see this red light and you see the symbols and you see performances and art and music. And it's just, I wish something was possibly here in Zurich. Zurich would never stage something like that. Zurich is way too conservative for something like that. So it was really an experience that is absolutely amazing. I would go back there anytime.
Awesome. I grew up in Tasmania. I grew up in the north, but yeah, I'm just a huge fan of what the community, the arts community that they managed to congregate in Hobart, and some of the, getting Emperor and just all sorts of this crazy mayhem. I think they got down there like.
Yeah. Yeah, and on top of that, the organization, the promoter of the organization, it was so professional. We couldn't have asked for anything more. When I play Zurich, and I'm not kidding you, when I play Zurich, my hometown, everything's lacking. Everything's unprofessional, which is why I hardly ever play my hometown. And I fly around to the other side of the world, fly to Hobart, and everything is absolutely perfect. You gotta really appreciate that, you know.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of there was a long time where you did not get gigs in Tasmania. When I was growing up there, we got bugger all. Now it's gotten so much better there. So they're getting internationals and oh, it's great.
Hmm. Well, I hope that festival really prospers. They deserve it.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the rest of this year?
Well, once I get these concerts out of the way, I want to continue working with TRIPTYKON on new material. We've been rehearsing new songs, and it sounds very encouraging. But we're still not at the point where we want to be. I want to have material for at least 2 albums so we can make an informed selection, and we're not quite there yet. And I also want there's a lot of song ideas that I still need to translate into real music. So there's still a lot of work in the coming months. And even though I absolutely love playing the stage, but these concerts that have been scheduled a long time ago are now a bit interfering with us writing on the album. But once August is past, we're going to refocus on. There's hardly any more concerts later this year with TRIPTYKON Trump Death. We're really going to focus on the TRIPTYKON album. That is the focus and the pressure of my life right now.
I have to hand it to you for your sense of humor. I was going back through your social media and the Barbie Cold Lake photo had me absolutely dying.
Well, what else is there to say?
I love it. Well, we won't go into it, but what I did like was there was a clip of someone talking about it in an interview with you. And you said, you were just trashing it. Oh, it's a horrible album. I don't want to waste a minute of it. That clip of you saying, I don't want to waste a minute of it lasts exactly 58 seconds.
Well,
Perfect. Chef, chef's kiss. Well done. Tom, this has been wonderful, mate. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, mate, have a wonderful day. And it was really nice to meet you.
same here. Thank you very much for your time. It's not something I take for granted to do an interview with Australia, even after 43 years. I'm from Switzerland, and not every Swiss bank gets to do interviews with Australia. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. Have a great rest of your day, mate.
You too. Bye.